So, how do I use tungsten jig versus lead jigs?
The lead versus tungsten issue is one more piece of the arsenal.
When do I use lead jig versus tungsten? I'm telling you right now, I'm not really on the tungsten bus rolling down the road. Like, there's so many people jumping on tungsten. Tungsten is 30% heavier than lead. Okay, I get that. But lead makes different shapes. So you get, if I want any kind of action, movement, slow movement, different shapes, I go with lead. But tungsten does fish a little heavier, tungsten with fluorocarbon.
I heard your guest earlier before. I agree. I think tungsten can be a little bit too heavy, especially in larger sizes, and also then you start losing your profiles. I think tungsten's a tool, but I don't think it replaces lead. I don't think it replaces any of the other alloys either. I think it's a very small, compact product that gets you down deep and gets you down deep fast. But there's times when you don't want that sink rate, you don't want that fall rate to be as fast as tungsten offers. And so I keep tungsten in the box, but I also keep, lead as well.
Well, I'm pretty much fishing all tungsten panfish jigs now. Why did I switch to tungsten? Well, first because I caught more fish on them. And I think that's why a lot of people have changed, because their buddy caught more fish than they did, so they're going to switch to what they're using.
You know, there's certain situations where I love tungsten. I mean, you have total control over really, really small baits, especially for panfish. But there's other times with lead where, it just falls differently. So like a bigger spoon, like a buckshot spoon or something of that nature, I kind of like that lead versus that tungsten sitting straight up and down when you're fishing a spoon. So, in that aspect, I like both species of metal.
Tungsten spoons are my favorite because, it's just a big slab of tungsten to get you down there to speed fish.
I like the heavy fall of tungsten. I like all the benefits of tungsten. What I do notice is sometimes we're getting into those smaller profiles, and lead actually gives you larger profiles. When they want a bigger jig, then I will go back to lead. And so basically all the small stuff, 1/8 and under, or 1/16 and under in my box is all tungsten, and heavier than that is all lead. That's at least how I use, to put it real quick, that's how I use tungsten versus lead now.
Day in and day out, the first jig I'm gonna grab is the one that I've been good with, and usually it's made of lead. To have a, how would you say, a positive comment of what the difference is, I would have to say it's strictly a preference by people. That's my deal on it anyway.
You're trying to mimic some sort of aquatic invertebrate, some sort of a bug that is almost weightless. How can you take something that has mass and weight and imitate something that's weightless? It's really tricky. The cool part with tungsten is that you can stay at the same weight as lead but be smaller. So to me, what you lack in fall rate with tungsten, because it does fall quickly, you don't get as much of a finesse approach, you can make up with in size. So you can shrink that same bait down, get a ton of action, and achieve basically the same fall rate as a much larger size lead head jig.
Tungsten is the hot craze right now, and obviously with fishing, there's a lot of trendy stuff, and at the end of the day, if people knew how good a plain hook and a split shot worked, none of us would have a job, okay? But, when you look at tungsten, it is heavier. I think it displaces more water. I think it gives the soft plastic more action on the drop, where it's more abrupt, and so you can get those tentacles to pulsate easier. Obviously, you can fish more water quickly because it drops down quicker, and so there's a lot of things to like about tungsten. I'm using tungsten a lot, but at the same time, there's a time and place for lead. I'm still finding myself resorting back to just a classic teardrop shaped lead jig on a really, really tough bite at times. And I think what happens is when a fish comes up and looks at it, you have a teardrop, and it's painted pretty to catch the fisherman, but when the fish comes up to it and you have soft plastic worked horizontal off of it, it's not like the fish see that, and so it's a smaller profile than a horizontal jig. So a vertical jig from a fish's perspective, for the bluegill crappie, is smaller, and it moves less water. It has a smaller profile, a smaller footprint. It just feels littler. And so when you're trying to duplicate invertebrates and say even a small jig with a soft plastic, it might be an inch-long profile. There's no macrovert or chromonid that is in the water that's that big anyways. And so when they get tuned into eating that small stuff, come midwinter, middle of the day, high sun, whatever, I still find situations all the time where I catch more fish with going lead and then going vertical, just to try to soften up that overall feel of that presentation and look like a smaller bug yet. And so lead isn't going away. There's still a time and place for it.
lead is still something you can mold and make shapes out of, and it's cheaper. You get 2 for the price of 1 tungsten. So I'm about 60 to 70% lead, and then I have tungsten for the right situations.
In the winter, when I'm fishing deeper, you know, the tungsten jig falls quicker. I can get down to the fish faster, up, down faster. Now, if I'm fishing shallower, let's say I want a slow drop or a slow application because every bug or everything is falling slow, then I might use lead in a shallower application, or when I'm fishing shallower in the water column with a float or what have you.
I would say the majority of my tungsten jigs are going to be horizontal jigs, and the majority of my vertical jigs are going to be lead jigs. My vertical jigs are my day savers. If I'm guiding and people are struggling with bites on a horizontal bait, I'll give them a vertical bait and then they'll get hooked up a lot easier.
I honestly have to say for walleyes I use lead a lot more. And I use a lot of 16th and 8th ounce jigs, even down 30, 35 feet, because you're normally not dealing with a whole lot of current. Some lakes you do, obviously, but so I like to use a good jig that's set up for vertical fishing, like using longer shank lead jigs. And a lot of the tungsten jigs are not of the right design to get the physics of a proper hook set in ice fishing, where the lead ones are. Panfish, whole different ball game. Tungsten's good. A lot of times you can get a second, third, fourth fish real quick if you drop to them quick. And, or if you've missed one, if you're using live bait like a waxy or something like that for bluegills or perch or crappies, you know, you can get that up, rebait, pop it down really fast, and those fish are normally in the area yet, so you get a second crack at them.
Like, I believe that there's the denseness of the tungsten, the molecules are closer together, and that you get a different ping, meaning the sound of the sonar going down, hitting the lure going off to the sides, and attracting fish when they're in the positive feeding mode.
I think fall rate has way more to do with how we trigger fish to bite, right? It's easy to attract them. It's even easy to tease them into coming in closer to take a look. But that fall rate and how that jig is able to move in minute little areas and the lift and drop of it and how slow it drops, that's what triggers fish to bite. And I think that the difference between tungsten and lead is one thing, and the difference between lead and like poly is the next level.
You know, as far as being a non-toxic type of metal, you know, I would love to see it go completely away from leads and toxic material, but as of right now, I like the ability as an angler to be able to fish with different types of metals. It's great, and every year it seems like we're getting better metals, we're getting better plastics, and as an angler on ice, you can get smaller finesse baits that you just didn't have 3 or 4 years ago, and it's just great to see.